The European Personnel Selection Office, EPSO, will soon welcome a new intake of EU careers ambassadors at a conference in Brussels on the 5th of October. And we're here with Vice-President Maroš Šefčovič and Maria Krastrup, who is an ex-ambassador in the programme, just to say a few words about this programme. Vice President, welcome. Maria, welcome. Vice President, first of all, this whole programme is about attracting top graduates from universities. Can you say a little bit about the context in which we're currently recruiting?
Yeah, I think that context is difficult and challenging because we see that Europe goes through several years of crisis, and which of course goes together with the frustration, which is very natural, and therefore from the civil service and especially the European civil service, there are very, very high expectations which we have to deliver, how the European Union can help, what we can do better for our citizens, and therefore we need to have top quality people, top quality civil servants who are working for the EU institutions, and I know that we have them in the European Union. I met many of them at different universities across Europe, but very often they do not know about the possibilities to work for the European institution, about the opportunity, what it would be to work for the European institutions, and therefore I very much welcome the program and the work of EU career ambassadors, because they help us to spread the information, and they help us to reach out to the potential new young people whom we need so much to work for the EU institutions.
So Maria, you are an ex-ambassador. Can you briefly say what an ambassador actually does?
So the European Ambassador project started as a small pilot project in 2010, and now it's a European-wide project, which include 103 universities participating. And the main aim of the project is to encourage top students for some of the top universities all over Europe to pursue a career within one of the EU institutions. As a career ambassador, you are nominated for 1 year to carry out different events, activities on your campus, and basically act as a contact point for potential job seekers, fellow students who are interested in knowing more about the career opportunities that the EU institution can offer.
Maria, I know that you have a collection of questions for the Vice President, and these are questions that came in from other ambassadors. So now's the opportunity.
Thank you. So my first question is, what drove you to become Vice President of the European Commission?
I studied international relations at the university, and then when I was about to conclude my studies, there was this big transformation which took place in Europe. 1989 came, the Berlin Wall fell, and for most of my compatriots, and I'm sure in citizens in what we still call the new member states, there was only one direction, and it was the direction towards Europe, because we have seen it as a natural reunification of the European continent. And I just simply wanted to be part of that effort, and I was working for many years on the European affairs on the national side. I was diplomat of Czechoslovakia, then after the split of Slovakia, I very quickly realized that if I want to understand how the EU works, that I need to complete my education. So I did my PhD in European law, and then somehow naturally brought me to stay longer in Brussels. And when the offer came from the Slovak government to nominate me to the post of commissioner, of course I very gladly accepted, and now I have to say that I'm very happy about my current job. It's very exciting, even though we're going through very difficult times. So it was, I would say, the initial interest, but then of course such a sense of duty to help my country, and now I really feel the privilege that I can work for the European continent as a whole.
My next question is, what were your own expectations when you started working as a European Commissioner, and would you say that those expectations have been met?
From one side, I expected I would work with top professionals whom I became to know, because for many years I was sitting on the other side of the table in the enlargement process. So I know how they've been keen on details, how they've been pushing us here and there to be well prepared for the EU integration. So these I knew, and of course the expectations been very much met. But you know what was interesting for me, that even though I was working in international environment before, I can tell you that first couple of weeks I was extremely tired because the most of your communication you have with your colleague, it's now really in another language. So even though you speak English well, for me to get used to that every single sentence would be or in English or in French the whole day long, it still took me a couple of weeks to get used to. But now I think it's very natural to speak in this commissions type of Babylonian style, one sentence in English or French and mixed with your own language. And it's a, I would say, special environment which is very stimulating from that point of view, that you are just really working with the people from all the cultures in the European Union.
What changes have you noticed in the working environment at the European Commission over the years?
I think that such a most remarkable change is how the European Parliament is fulfilling its new role, because they get a lot of new powers from the Lisbon Treaty. Another big thing coming, I think, is much closer involvement of the national parliaments in the European affairs, especially with all the new proposals we put on the table in the field of economic governance. And then I think also the way how we interact with the citizens. The arrival of social media is very clearly here. We see that especially the young generation, they want to get the answer very quickly. They want to be answered on the social media platforms. So we have to develop this new style of communication and keep the system we had before, because still the classical journalist or middle or older generation, they prefer to get the information through those channels. So this is something I think on which we would work, how to adjust our spread of information to the young generation. But that interaction with the parliamentarians, be it European, national, and interaction with the citizens on this new platform, these are, I think, such a new features which I have observed over the last 3-4 years.
Would you recommend a EU career path to young Europeans, and if so, why?
I think there are several good answers to this question. First, because you really have opportunity to do something for your country and for your continent. And you can do it in a very stimulating environment where you can be sure that your colleagues would be former excellent students, very bright people who had to pass very demanding exams. So you're actually working in the collective for very motivated and very bright people. At the same time, you are in this multicultural and multilinguistic environment, which for everybody who likes to travel or enjoy another cultures is always very important. And for me, as being from the smaller or medium-sized member state, what was extremely interesting is the fact that you can actually be in the position where you are speaking on behalf of the biggest economy in the world. That in the negotiations you are representing the biggest trader in the world. If you speak to the countries in Africa or in Latin America, you are actually representing the Union, which is helping them the most. So you actually are really making a difference. And you can do it on such a scale, which is very difficult to do if you are working only for the national government. So I think this is something which is very interesting. And if you are a young person who likes to be working in the civil service and to be in this public service to the citizens, so I think that for all those to work for the EU institution is just the place to be.
Are there certain challenges in recruiting all these different nationalities, and what can be done to reduce these issues?
I would say the major challenge is to maintain real geographical balance with the staff of the European institutions. I was responsible for completing the phase where we got the recruits from all new member states. But now I see that we are in the situation where it is more and more difficult to recruit the people from so-called high-wage economies, or from, well, as we can call them, EU 15. There are, of course, several reasons for that, but mostly the competition on the labor market for this type of personalities, where we require 2 international languages, where we want to have good economists, scientists, linguists, or lawyers, is simply big, because you can work for multinationals, you can work for another international organizations, and therefore we are competing actually on the market for the brightest people on the continent, and especially in high wage economies is not that easy. Therefore we are trying to organize the programs like the program you represent, because we just simply want to inform the people about the exciting possibility to work for Europe.
What advice would you like to give to the future generation of Europe?
Be active citizen. That would be my answer number one, because very often I see that people, and especially young people, are frustrated. I know why the situation right now, especially with youth unemployment, is quite high. But I think that for the young generation, there is always that high expectation that you will change the world. And I think that you are really starting your careers in the times when the world is really changing. Just compare how we communicated, how we've been linked to each other 5 or 10 years ago, how we could travel in Europe, or how the Australia or China seem to be extremely far from us. So we are now living in completely new environment, and I believe that the young generation is excellently equipped to meet those challenges. Nobody before you spoke that well in foreign languages. Nobody was so digitally skilled as you are. Nobody was so well adapted to all these new challenges with which the globalization is bringing in. So therefore, I just would appeal to the young people to have high hopes, to be active citizens, and to bring what it's such a duty of every young generation, the positive change to Europe and to the world.
And my final question to you is, how do you imagine the future of Europe after the crisis? Does your vision include more or less Europe?
I think it would include more and better Europe, I would say. I mean, after these last 5 years, what I realized was that without very clear European involvement, it would be very difficult to start of very important reforms in our member states, because it's very rare that national governments want to start by itself to change the pension system or to start big educational reform. At the same time, I see that without very strong European steering, it will be very difficult for Europeans to stand up to all these globalization pressures coming from such a big countries like China or Russia, or to be equal partner in different kind of political issues to our allies, Americans. So I think that if we really want to preserve this leading position Europe enjoys now on the global scale, we simply have to be even more united and better coordinated. So I believe that this would be a rational choice for our citizens, that it would be the rational conclusions of European political leaders, and that this would help the Europe to really come into the 21st century, prepare internally, and be prepared for all these external dimension the globalization developments are bringing to our continent.
So Maria, thank you for being with us and putting the questions, and thanks to the ambassadors for all their great work in this program. And of course, thank you to the Vice President for your support for the program. I know you'd love to have been there on the 5th of October,
Absolutely.
But you have commitments elsewhere, which we understand. Thanks very much, Vice President.
Thank you.